23rd, 2023 Planning Commission meeting now in session. We will begin, as always, with the Pledge of Allegiance. Everyone can join us. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, and I'll do roll call. We have Commissioner Newman,
Present.
Commissioner Magai,
Present.
Commissioner Inga, Vice Chair Heschler,
I'm here.
and Chair Keldorf.
I'm here.
We have quorum.
It's nice to be back to that. Okay, public communications.
No public communications received?
Written communications other than what's in the agenda packet? I don't think so. No. Okay. Consent calendar. Looks like just meeting minutes from January of 2022 and March of 2023. So we are almost caught up, maybe. Okay. Would anybody like to make a motion to approve consent?
I will move.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
That brings us to continued business public hearing, and it's the proposed increase of backup generators for the data center located at 444 North Nash. I know we had a staff report when we saw this a while ago. Is there any update to that?
Thank you, Chair Keldorf. So before I start, I just want to let you know that we do have our new Planning Commissioner, Mario Inga. So this is his first meeting. So in order for him to take part in this item, I let him know what he needed to do, and he needed to watch the video from the February 23rd meeting, which at that time the Planning Commission discussed. And so, Mario, you were able to look at the video and...
Yes, I did. I watched the video that you sent me, so I feel confident that I can participate in this meeting.
Okay, perfect. So now we'll have 5 members to act on this. So with that, I'll just go ahead and just give a real brief intro. So as you know, this was before you on the 23rd of February. At that time, the commission had a lot of questions from the applicant, but also had, I think, a big concern also with the levels, emissions levels, and whether during testing of those generators, if those emission levels would go beyond what was discovered in the AQMD, in the CEQA analysis. We reached out to AQMD. As you can see on page 163 of the agenda, they responded back by saying that no, the emissions levels are not tested during that. So granted that they don't do that. I know that we know that the commission had a concern with that to ensure that emission levels don't exceed those thresholds for CEQA, and therefore we ended up putting a new condition of approval that specifies that those emission levels also be tested when the generators are tested, and that be submitted to staff as well. So with that, we do have the applicant in the audience as well, so they can answer any of the commission's questions, and that concludes our staff report or presentation.
So is this, well, I guess it is a public hearing item, so now would be the time for anybody in the community, but the first right always goes to the applicant. Mm-hmm. Is there is there a presentation, or is just Q&A?
No, if you guys just want Q&A at this point, yeah, the applicant is here, so.
Come on up. Thank you. If you could just introduce yourself.
My name's Sam Brown. I run engineering and construction for Server Farm, the owner of the data center at 444 Nash.
Thank you, Sam, for being here. So,
thank you.
Any questions?
Well, yeah, Sam, if you just want to walk us through, I appreciate you guys coming here. Thanks for taking the effort to answer our question about testing, and maybe just give us a little primer on how that works. You know, when you guys get ready to run a test, how to walk us through the steps of involving AQMD or other consultants to test. And just know that the reason we are so interested in this is you may know what we've gone through with Hyperion for the last couple of years, and everyone in town's a little sensitive.
Sure.
So, you know, we're trying to represent our community and make sure that the air quality is as good as it could be.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you ask about testing, you're talking about what would be like normal protocol for data center generator testing, right?
Sure, that, and then also when you guys do your backup testing.
Sure. So I think they're really one and the same. Every month, we would run each generator at idle speed for about 15 minutes to 30 minutes. And what we're doing during those activities are, one, just making sure it turns on, because we're supporting critical functions for state, government, web searches, whatever you can think of. So making sure they turn on, making sure that all of the mechanical and electrical features of the generator are operating within spec. So those would be just the general runs we would do every month. And then we have an annual test where we're bringing out the engine manufacturer, we're bringing out local electricians, we're hooking up a load bank to really put the generator through its paces, make sure that the sounds, the smells, the just visible reactions of the generator are what we would expect. And then we have the engine manufacturers, technicians looking at the speeds and feeds that would be coming out of that generator to make sure it's operating within the specified requirements.
All right.
I know, Kevin, you had a question. I don't want to steal your thunder. No, just about the move from, one additional.
Yeah, so this action would allow for 2 additional generators, right? Going from, so I'm just trying to just look at this right now. So you were approved for 14? So this would be approved to 16?
I think it's 15.
To
Yeah,
So
15.
one more generator?
Yeah.
But you currently have how many? 7 or 8?
8. Thank
Okay,
you.
so one of my concerns was, are we piecemealing these one off, like one at a time? And this was like approved 10 years ago, right? So like,
Right.
what drove you to, in 2022 to say, wow, we have 8 right now, we're approved for 14, now we need to get, approval for one more. Like, what is the thought process? What, can we just do it all at once? Is there a future projection of this? Or, yeah, I'm just wondering, why is it, you're not even at your max yet, but you're asking for such a small, minute increase?
Yeah, I think that is a very fair question. So the reason, the true transparent reason we are adding one more is because the customer moving into this data center that's driven the building applications and all of the expansion that you're seeing on site has a new infrastructure topology requirement. They call it N+2C. 2C means two redundant generators instead of one. It's driven by, a lot of it is lessons learned. This is the largest data center user in the world. They have experienced outages that in different places that have driven the change to this, let's call it an enhanced topology. And it's supporting things from 3-letter government agencies to Los Angeles World Airports. That is in our data center. They are supporting that function. The police, that is in our data center. They are supporting those functions. So all they're trying to do is ensure that when something goes wrong, when the power goes out, if there was an earthquake, God forbid, that they have enough redundancy and resiliency baked into their backup generation that they know they can support those critical functions.
So for you as, I guess, as a landlord, or was that a proper?
Sure, we'll go with
No,
that.
I'm getting it. So you as a landlord, so is your intent then to just come and do one-offs as?
No,
needed?
and I appreciate you bringing that back up. So this is it. The site is done. It is fully leased. This is taking it when the previous owner did the permitting for the planning, permitting, and emissions approvals for the site. Data centers were a lot different. A lot of what we're doing is on top of enhancing the system architecture, we're also bringing it up to current best practices, and we call that density. So a power per cabinet in the past may have been 3 to 4 kW. We have cabinets in our data center that are 34 kW. So we've leased everything. This will be the last application that we undertake here.
Okay, so, you know, as Jay mentioned, you know, we're concerned about, you know, things like Hyperion. So for us, you know, backup generators, when the power goes down, then, you know, that's why you need your backup generators. So here, when the power goes down, Chevron starts flaring, Hyperion, who knows what's happening, and then we're gonna have, you know, diesel generators, not just yours, but others. So during power outages, you know, we have those more often, you know, the PSP events, where they do it intentionally. So it's, at those times, then the air quality kind of is bad at that time, because all of the diesel generators, everything like kind of kicks off all at once. There's a lot of flaring, you know, Hyperion's stuff shuts off. So that's one of our concerns there during these events. So you're saying that this is going to be it then? So you've maxed out
Yes.
based on this? Because I was going to ask about, if you want this further expansion, have you looked at alternative technologies
Yeah.
like, you know, linear generation, or going off the natural gas grid, which is more resilient than, you know, the power grid during, you know, earthquakes and things like that? So have you looked at those at all?
We have, and we've looked at them at a global scale. The reason we go with diesel is, it's really two, if I could summarize all of it. One is form factor. So you talk about liquid natural gas reciprocating engines, and you have energy storage, batteries. So when you talk about form factor, batteries don't work. It just takes too much space. We have a requirement from our customers that range from, requirements from our customers that range from 24 hours of on-site backup generation to 48 hours. To put that, even lithium ion or nickel zinc, into a container that would fit, well, you just can't. It just doesn't fit. The max, I don't even know, it just doesn't work, form factor wise. The reason we don't use liquid natural gas or natural gas in general is there is a safety concern and a resiliency concern with natural gas. So in an earthquake zone, when, God forbid that happens, natural gas likely will be turned off to avoid really, really bad problems. That turns off our generators, which potentially impacts a lot of those companies and agencies that I just mentioned, which would only exacerbate a really, really bad day. On top of that, you could also say, you could look at storage of liquid natural gas on site and use that in the event that the city connection was turned off. If that happens, now you have a real explosion risk at a critical facility, whereas diesel might burn, but it won't blow up. So it's safer and it's smaller. That's why we use diesel. And the industry is trying really hard to find alternatives. There aren't any right now.
Sam, what are your diesel fuel storage tanks? Are they there on site?
They are, yeah, great question. They're above ground, double wall, UL listed steel tanks. So they'll have all of the safety measures that would go into a UL listed tank. So you have leak detection. Like I said, it's double wall. So if there is a failure of that, you know, interior membrane, you have the outer that would catch it, leak detection to notify you. We have regular fuel polishing to monitor just the condition of the fuel. And on top of that, we use ultra low sulfur diesel to make sure whatever we're putting into the atmosphere during these off events where it runs, it's as clean as possible.
So do you intend to have Tier 4 final emission engines?
We've put in tier 2 engines and plan to put in tier 2 engines in the future just because we looked at the regulations and complied with that.
What's the difference between 2 and 4?
I'd say about 70% emissions.
Cleaner on the
Yeah.
floor?
Mhm.
Yeah, and there's actually, they're in the process of considering a role for Tier 5, which is cleaner, the higher tier, the cleaner it is, but you have not looked at the Tier 4?
Looked at in other jurisdictions. So we have a lot of data centers in Europe and the Middle East. We've used tier 4 engines there, but we typically comply with the local regulations for the jurisdiction that we're going to be deploying those engines.
In the local jurisdiction that determines that in our area is who?
I would need South Coast AQMD.
AQMD.
Yeah.
Okay.
Is it South Coast or is it, are you going by what's in the previous agreement? Because I assume South Coast would require the cleanest engines for, the things are grandfathered in, but for the new purchases.
No, for new emergency generators, Tier 2 is considered best available control technology from the South Coast AQMD.
Well, since, do you know the emission difference between Tier 4 and Tier 2?
I can look it up. I think it's about 85%, actually.
Okay,
Yeah.
85%.
I mean, I think you said 70, it's somewhere in there. Yeah, it's an order of magnitude. It's a big jump. But in this jurisdiction, these are pre-certified from the South Coast AQMD for the purpose of emergency. If you want a generator you use all the time, you'd have to step up to Tier 4. But we're currently Tier 2 is backed.
Do you know what the cost difference is between the two technologies?
Let's see, I'm tech.
Significant. Significant.
Really?
Yeah, shocker. Yeah. So to just put it in perspective, it always depends on the size of the engine. For the 2.5 meg engines that we're talking about here, it would probably be between $300,000 and $400,000 per engine difference. And it's the size of a Volkswagen Beetle that you would have to put onto the enclosure. It's a thing.
Questions for Brenda, Mario?
Very informative.
And Sam, when do you expect to have build out on all 14? Or 15, rather?
Well, we've still got a ways to go. The rain has impacted our project, as you can imagine. So if you drove by the site right now, you would still see a lot of people playing in the dirt. So we've got some
Mud.
time. Yeah, our turnover date right now for our customer is September 15th. So we would need to, hopefully land that generator sometime in July.
I think my only question is, I'm assuming you've had time to review the additional condition of approval and talk that through with staff. And
We've talked about it. I'd love some perspective on perspective may be the wrong word. I know there have been some problems with Hyperion and other things that have gone on. What drove that as being the condition, considering our use? Being a data center, right? Our product, we take energy and we provide services for, I would say, critical services, whereas Hyperion takes energy and refines a product into something else.
yeah, no,
So-
fair enough. I mean, I'm going to be way over my skis talking about the environmental impact, but I can
Yeah.
tell you, as Jason, with Hyperion, we have been pushing for some fence line monitoring to be measuring things other than hydrogen sulfide, and that's been a long process. And we don't want to rely on them to be measuring what the emissions are. So I know that there are a number of emissions listed on here. NOx is something that we hear a lot, the nitrogen oxide as being a concern. From there are a number of others. Again, way over my skis. Maybe Kevin has a better handle on that, but just in giving residents the peace of mind that we know what we're working on with Hyperion. We know what Chevron emits and when they flare and when that spikes. And so to not be adding anything additional that we then also have to be concerned about or that we're not quantifying.
Yeah, we know you're a very different business.
Right.
Than Hyperion.
Clearly.
Yes.
And also, fence line monitoring, when people do fence line monitoring here, there's other ambient sources, there's other stuff going on.
Sure.
And that's kind of, I think everyone will just, does the, salute of pointing at everybody else. So if we had fence line monitoring everywhere, we've got to figure out, I'm not advocating for that, but it would be easier to figure out, who's
Sure.
doing what.
I think an important distinction to make between some of the businesses that you just mentioned and the service that we provide is we actively try to use ours so little to make sure they never go out of tune. And if they do go out of tune, there are significant penalties with our customer contracts to make sure we rectify that. Just an important distinction to point out.
Understood.
Absolutely.
The other situation is when these were first approved 10 years ago or so, there was no school there. You know, the Weisburn School did not exist.
Sure.
There's an aquatic center across the street. There's a lot of kids around the area. So it adds a little more gravity to the
Sure.
discussion.
And that was why we took it so seriously. And, you know, put in the effort that we did, making sure that those sensitive receptors were considered and that we were, I believe we are well below the acceptable thresholds for almost every measurable requirement. Huh? For every, I'm sorry, correction, for every. Yeah, that's right.
Everything is below.
Yeah.
Understood.
But we're well below, and, you know, we're a part of the community, and we want to make sure we continue to be a part of the community that supports it, and anyways, we've tried to factor that in.
Appreciate that.
I have a personal curiosity. These generators that you need to order to implement June, July in order to have them ready, where are they made? Where do they come from?
It's a great question. So a lot of them are Cummins generators. Those are manufactured in Wisconsin. And a couple of them are going to be Kohler generators, and those are manufactured, I think, in Columbus, Ohio.
They're American made.
Yeah, oh yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. And then we ship them to an enclosure manufacturer to put the skins around them to make them suitable for outdoor use. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm also curious about, I'm looking at the existing ones that you have. You have 8. The project proposed 5 of 2,500 kilowatts and 2 of 1,250 kilowatts. That takes you to 15. Why the new projected proposals are all of them 2,500? That way you have just 14 and
You're asking why we're adding,
2 of 1,250 instead of just 1 of 2,500. That's on page 53
Yeah.
of your Kimberly Hall report. I mean, why?
it was a specific customer requirement. That's really all it came down to.
Yeah, I mean, I appreciate you being here, and I think you helped us all
Yeah.
answer some questions about
Sure.
specifically, you know, why the additional generator was needed, so.
Yeah.
Anything else? Thank you very much. Any public comments not from the applicant? No, okay. Then at this time, we'll close public communications. Any further conversation will come from the dais.
I'll go first.
Sure.
So, I guess doing fence line monitoring for an emergency use is probably, you know, a little over the top. So, you know, I'm okay with removing that provision. But if we're done at 15 generators, then can there be a provision that says that if there's any request to add any more, it needs to be of the newest technology, and there needs to be a technology evaluation in case something like hydrogen or battery storage does advance that much at that time? Instead of, you know, doing another tier 2 and then another tier 2, you know, doing one-offs, can we essentially cap them at now at the 15, since the applicant said that that's all they'll need for now, but if anything changes, then if they'll have to do whatever the latest technology is and assess even advanced technologies even more than further than the tier 4F or the tier 5.
But if tier 2 is actually the local requirement, why would we, if it were that requirement at the time, why would we create a bit of a hurdle for them otherwise?
Well, because he said that they're maxed out. So if he wants to go further, I mean, there's the minimum. In my eyes, you know, we can look at things like, okay, just go do the minimum, do the minimum, do the minimum, right? Or we can ask, you know,
But
companies
they
to
say,
like,
what you're saying is they say they've maxed out at 15.
yeah. But if they
What you're saying is that we add a provision that if they come back before the city to ask for more,
yes,
then the next one has to be the latest technology.
yes.
If the Southern California Air Quality requires it, even if the requirement is for tier 2, why would we have to impose that if that's all I'm asking.
No,
Thought process, that's
Yep.
all.
so that we have the cleanest technology. We don't have to propose that.
Yeah.
This is what I'm throwing out there.
That if they were to come back and ask for more than 15.
That
would-
next one, number 16, would have to be the latest
Yeah.
technology. That probably, does that work? If you've
Yeah,
got
it's a diesel
diesel, the
generator,
other
yeah.
15, and then you got this new
Yeah, well, I
hydrogen
mean,
technology, does
well, I
that
mean, but
work?
if it's the cleanest diesel technology, it will definitely work. But if they assess other technology, and they assess at that time that it doesn't work, then it doesn't work.
Right.
But as long as they're going for the cleanest technology
Yeah.
after that.
And am I hearing the first part of what you said correctly, that you would be okay with not having this additional condition of approval
Yes,
that's
the
requiring the
fence
testing?
line monitoring, yeah.
I mean, is that the read, that it's fence line monitoring, or
Or,
that
yeah,
it's,
the monitoring.
once,
Yeah, the condition is written, is on condition number 8 on page 22 of the resolution, and it's also on page 14 in the staff report.
So can you read
So,
it first?
so yeah, so what it is, there's no fence line. What it comes down to is, so there were reactive organic gas, NOx, monoxide, carbon monoxide, sulfur, and coarse particulate and fine particulate. So there's 6 emissions that are generated from the generators. And so those were assessed through air quality, and they found that that running those generators for a certain amount of time did not trigger the threshold for CEQA to be considered a significant impact. So at the February 23rd meeting, there was some discussion amongst the commission about trying to ensure that those emission levels of those identified emissions would not exceed and therefore tip over into a level of significance, which is why we tailored a condition of approval for your consideration, that those 6 be tested, the emissions levels be tested when the emergency generators are tested, so that we can ensure that they are not going above that threshold that pushes it into a significant impact. So, but yeah, but it would be done by the applicant, and, you know, they'd submit it and we'd have a third-party person review it. Again, that was our attempt to kind of, for your consideration. And it would not be something that would have any fence line monitoring. It would just be specific to those testing.
And do we have an idea of how onerous that would be? I mean, are all the generators tested at once, and you have one consultant come out and he tests everything, and it's one submitted report, or is this happening 15 times a year?
Well, the applicant probably could go into a little bit, Brad, I don't know if you have some, okay. Well, this is Brad, he's the original project planner, he's fresh back from Michigan, which he was stuck at the last, at the ice storm out there at the last meeting, so he's now in California again.
Right. Thank you, Eduardo. For the record, Brad Meisner, contract planner. I've been assisting on this case for some time. The way that the condition was drafted was, I would say, a little bit more on the conservative side, right? It was meant to provide for testing for the city to ensure that you wouldn't go above and beyond those emissions 2 times a year. So we picked the months of June and December. And so the idea is that they would test them 1 time or twice annually at the time that they do their normal testing, just to ensure that it wouldn't exceed those thresholds. I will note that in those 6 emissions, really the main gas that comes up even close to the threshold as it was modeled is the nitrogen oxide. So the others are way below the thresholds through the modeling. But so if the commission still felt comfortable with the condition the way it's written, then it would allow for that testing to demonstrate.
Excuse me, what number condition is this?
It's number 8. Condition, yeah, it's on page 22.
Yeah. Right, so to answer the question, twice a year.
Okay.
Yeah.
And do you have an idea what that costs every time to do it? I mean, I'm just wondering how
owners.
onerous this is.
Yeah, and I'd have to defer to
Yeah.
Heidi here to. Sure.
Sure. Just in case anybody's watching from home. they can
Actually,
hear
there's a
you.
bunch of people watching. I'm serious. The entire construction site's watching right now. So the cost per generator to do that testing is about $100,000. And I just want to make sure everyone's like really clear on what you're asking. So we run 11 times a year for 30 minutes just to make sure it turns on and the sights, sounds, all those senses that go into making sure something's working well all of those pass the sniff test. And then one time a year, we do a load bank at 100% for about an hour, and we're done. This testing will be 100% load all day, and you will be taking samples all day. And something could go wrong, and you need to look at it. Do I need to tweak the diesel? Do I need to change the oil? Do I need to do this? And then you're going to go back the next day, and you're going to run it at 100% load for the full day, pumping out everything that you don't want to pump out.
And tell us why it's got to be run at 100% for all day versus your
Yeah.
15-minute idle,
Yeah.
normal test?
You need to get the engine and the exhaust stream to temperature, which is about 800 degrees. That's when all the, I guess, the magic happens. I'm sure Heidi can.
The source testing that you're asking for, there are protocols. And so it needs to be run at load at 100% power for at least an hour. That's one test. That is by protocol. So that would be a lot more emissions than they put out doing 15 minutes at no load. So you're asking them to do more emissions to then test to make sure it meets the standard.
So is a 15-minute test at an idle not testable? I mean, why
It
can't
would not
they-
meet, it would not meet protocol. You'd get a very low number. You'd be very impressed.
Well,
with
which
their
is what we're
emissions.
looking
Right,
for
which would be
anyway.
great news across the
But
board.
it doesn't tell you that it stayed in tune, right? You see what I'm saying? The emission standard for this engine is at 100% load. There's a standard that a tier 2 or a tier 4 or any of them has to meet. At idle, you're below, just by definition. So testing it at idle will prove that by design, it's less than the standard. It doesn't really tell you, has it gone out of tune? That's at load, under pressure.
So when you're testing, you really just want to make sure that they will start an emergency. So that's why it's running
The
at
amount
idle.
of maintenance, they're doing maintenance testing. They're not doing testing, in another concept. They are doing maintenance testing, which they do to make sure it works, but also to keep the warranty up.
So when we're testing for emissions, we have to recreate a
Right.
scenario where it is.
Right. And another.
Operational.
Exactly. And so there is already a condition in the mitigation measure that the generators cannot run for more than 108 minutes a day. So they would have to run one test for 1 hour, one day, come back the next day, come back the next day, just to do all 6. That would take 6 work days. That's if nothing goes wrong. And that's a MOB cost for each time for the source testers to come. I mean, if they come and they bang out 6 in a day, then they charge one price. If they have to come and do nothing else during that day, it is really, really onerous, the way that you guys have constructed it.
Well, I mean, that sounds totally different than
Very-
what
I would
any of
agree.
us were thinking about when we were having this conversation last
Exactly.
time.
No, I mean, that's very fair. That's
So
very
I'm
fair.
glad we brought this up. I mean, that was not our intention. Our intention was just to know, all right, you're running these 15 minutes. How's the air quality? We didn't expect you to have to crank up the jets to full blast for
Yeah,
all day.
and create additional emissions.
Yeah.
Yeah,
By testing the
basically,
emissions.
yeah.
I mean, I guess just to kind of bring this to a close, what you're saying is there is no test that is appropriate for the 15 minutes at idle that would give us any information. Yeah.
I'm exactly trying to say that, for the value of the information. We can collect data, but, if your standard is at 1.0, and idle's at 0.2, what's that gonna say? Does that really say the engine works at 0.1 at full load? It doesn't really tell you that. It just says, for those 15 minutes, it was much, much less than the standard. It would also, I mean, it just, you can collect data, yeah, absolutely, it just wouldn't be a regulatory protocol. So it would just be, here's information, and you can plot that over time, but again, the way they're already running with the 108 minutes, they're already having to do this kind of monthly maintenance over a couple of days. Then you add in, and even if it's 15 minutes, they're
Do
only
you
gonna
ever
do-
test for that? The way that it's been written? Is there ever, like with all of the data centers that
Yes.
you operate?
Well, okay, for generators that are used in non-emergency, they have requirements to be tested every 8,760 hours, which is a full year, or 3 years if they're used intermittently. That's, that's an example of this kind of
The
test.
ones that are running?
The ones that are running
Right.
base load, exactly.
Right.
Maybe they're just peaker and they're used during the air conditioning, the summer months, right? So that's how you end up with, but those, because they run a lot, EPA has said you test them after 8,760 hours of use or 3 years, whichever comes first. So the kind of testing is known. It comes to protocol. They come out with their probes. It takes all day to set up, to get the probes in the stack, et cetera, to run it, et cetera.
Is there ever a time when, in any of your data centers, where backup generators are run, asking for this information, this kind of testing?
I'm not aware of any.
Okay.
Yeah, because, as we said, the EPA does not require, South Coast does not require backup generators that run no more than 40 hours a year to be tested. I mean, you can see how 40 and 8,760 equate. It would take many, many years to equate to the hours that a baseload generator would have to run before being tested.
That is good and important new information, so
Yeah.
thank you for sharing it.
Okay. Well,
Then-
it feels very onerous, guys.
Yeah, it is.
And counterintuitive to what we're trying to, right?
In
Reduce.
an obscure way, rather unnecessary, actually. Unnecessary may not be the right word or
You say
term.
rather necessary or unnecessary? Oh, okay.
Unnecessary, unnecessary.
Yeah, I mean, I
No-
think.
Nobody else, it's not done anywhere else, the backup generators. It's never done.
Yeah,
It's
and
an
I think
unusual
it's
request.
different than
That's
the
used-
intent of what we
Right.
thought it would be, that we were just
Clearly.
collecting samples during that 15-minute start.
Right.
Yeah, something that's used in emergency situations only to have, that level of monitoring is onerous. But, with engines, there's, just over time, there's like a specific deterioration factor, right? Like if you're starting here and you're going, 5% per year going down, the efficiency of it just gets dirtier over time. A tier 2 with higher emissions goes 5%, but if you get a tier 4, if all future ones are tier 4, you can pretty much guarantee that it's going to be cleaner than the tier 2, and we don't have to monitor it as much, which is kind of what, would be my preference. It started with a cleaner engine moving forward, so we have less worry about just the natural deterioration of an engine, of a dirtier engine, when, if everybody has a tier 2 in the area, then, these power shutdown events, well, we're going to have a lot of emissions. People are going to be swimming there. There's schools there now. It's different than 10 years ago. So that's kind of what I'm thinking about when, I'm saying that any future, if they're maxed out now, and then if they can agree to that moving forward, it likely won't be needed. Then if it won't be needed, then it's not a big deal to say that to get a tier 4 after that. So.
And maybe that's a question for Joaquin. Is that something that, we could include in this approval, is then limiting future approvals? Or something?
I do have concerns about an overreach in the sense that what's before you is a specific proposal that doesn't entail that, and the envelope of what's being proposed is in the context of an environmental review for this particular fact set. So I would have some concerns about any future sort of change to the baseline we're assessing here without knowing what that is, and that not being proposed in this, for this entitlement.
Yeah, I understand that.
So adding 1 goes through this, I guess, this process light, right? Because, this isn't the full environmental process. This is, would this be an amendment to?
You're saying adding,
Yeah, so they're adding 1 right now. So they're not going through the full environmental review process? Is that, am I
Well,
characterizing that correctly?
No, they did. They did a brand new initial study and mitigating neg deck.
Okay.
and just to frame it a little more, so the sole entitlement here is the EA environmental review due to the additional units being proposed.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. Because previously, what was approved was a specific number of units.
And the analysis was tethered to the specific type and the specific number of units.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
So I think we should work within the confines of that specific proposal. That would be my recommendation.
And that process would have to, I assume, be started again if they were to come back and ask for additional generators, then that would necessitate an entirely fresh environmental review.
Correct. Correct.
So
But
when
if they,
does- when does
sorry,
the-
but if they came in the future and they decided to swap out for, 2s with 4s, I mean, all the more better. Is that grammatically? I believe that was correct. Sorry about that. All the better. It really comes down to, at least for purposes of the assessment, was the number of generators. So presumably they could come in with 12, change out 12 of them, and do away with 3 if they got, better, better products or better engines that are cleaner, and, that they'd be fine. But for us, the trigger would be the number. So if they came in with additional, then we would do a whole brand new assessment.
Okay. So when, like, from a CEQA standpoint, when does piecemealing become an issue? If it's all just one, adding one generator?
Well, I mean, it's almost a fine line, because, I mean, at this point, is it considered piecemeal? No, I don't think so. I mean, it's been 10 years since the initial approval was granted. I don't think that there's any, hard and fast rule at least when it comes to this type of thing, that we could classify it as piecemeal. But if for whatever reason they came in 6 months with another one, and we'd question that. But even still, if they came in next month with an additional one, you'd have to start all over again, with at least, if nothing else, maybe do like an addenda to this particular initial study, to look at the air quality emissions.
We're going to address that
Sure.
a little bit, yeah. To avoid the, concerns around piecemealing, we did a cumulative health risk. We didn't just do the incremental of 6 new. That's, when you piecemeal under CEQA, and the lawyers will help me, it's to avoid a stricter, more stringent evaluation, right? So to avoid that, we didn't just say, hey, there's 8, there's going to be 15, let's just look at 7. We actually looked at the health risk of all of them, including the ones that are already on the ground and already approved. So that's how we really enveloped, around that, to avoid any concerns about that. And even with that, the cumulative health risk is well below the standard.
Thank you. Well, I will say I appreciate staff's time working this and working through it, and definitely the applicant's time educating us on the process. And with all that said, I would actually make a motion to go back to our prior conditions of approval and strike 8. Right. And I feel like we have consensus on that, but I'm open to hearing otherwise.
No, I agree, 100%.
I would
Yep.
If I
second
could
that.
just clarify, were there, in speaking of the prior conditions of approval, is the only change condition 8?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. So so the motion would be to eliminate the new condition number 8, and everything would just be renumbered after that. Not a
And with
problem.
that, I would second your motion.
And I'll take votes. We have Commissioner Newman,
She says yes.
Commissioner Magai,
Yes.
Commissioner Inga,
Yes.
Vice Chair Heschler,
Aye.
and Chair Kildorf.
Yes,
And motion passes 5-0.
thank you. And thank you for your time again. Appreciate
Thanks
it.
for coming out.
Okay.
Thank you.
We have no new public hearings, mate, and no new business. Brings us to report from our Community Development Department.
Sure, thank you. So a couple things to report. On Tuesday's council meeting, the council approved the general plan annual report and housing element reports. So that'll be going to the state in time for our April 1st deadline. So that just helps, keep HCD, at bay for a bit. I mean, there are other things that we'll still need to be doing, which will eventually come before you, so that we can ultimately get a fully certified housing element. So, secondly, I just want to extend our welcome to Mario Inga, our new planning commissioner. So he'll be serving out Ryan Baldino's term. Since he has left this body. So welcome aboard, Mr. Inga. We look forward to working, on behalf of staff and our director who's not here today. We look forward to working with you and along with your colleagues on the board, or on the commission. So
Thank you.
welcome.
Thank you.
Welcome. Thank you, Eduardo. Anything from the city attorney's office?
Nothing at this time. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. So at this time, any planning commissioner comments?
I just want to say, Mario, it's been nice to see you out on the street for these many years, and it's nice to see you right here on the dais.
Likewise.
Welcome.
Thank you, Brenda.
You're welcome.
I agree. Welcome, Mario.
Thank you.
And you'll do good stuff here.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Yes, welcome, welcome. It was mentioning to Jay that it was hard to find parking today. That means that there are people at the farmer's market, so it's nice to see.
That's a
So-
good
The
thing.
sun is
That's a
out.
good
Yes,
thing.
yeah.
Yeah, and I will be repetitive and welcome you as well. So it's good to have a full house, and it's great to have you here.
Thank you so much. I'm excited.
Thank you for joining us. I think that's it. So with that, we'll adjourn.